Welcome to part 3 of the world's biggest, wealthiest, most intricate business that everybody is in on, child and human trafficking. Now we're going to talk about this. We're now on part 3, if I'm not mistaken. You want to check out the first 2 parts, especially part 1, to understand why we're talking about this. Today we're going to be talking more, or in this video we're going to be talking more about some of the things that Ali has spoken about as far as the elites, and we're going down the food chain, explaining how at every level of society we are failing the children, and there are people at every level, and not just a couple of people, not just a minority, but a significant number of people at every level who are allowing for these things to continue. So today we're going to talk about the elites. Now, I already mentioned in the previous videos that Ali came forward and she specifically suggested that certain members such as John Travolta, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Beyonce and others were all involved with this stuff. She specifically talked about this, and I want to talk about the elites in this regard, guys, because this is where we get to see the work of Satan, as I talked about in the previous video, where he uses the classic deal of you give me this and I give you that, right? Magic comes with a price, as I always say to you guys. I always remind you, they tell you this in the fairy tales. They're telling you this on purpose, because you see what the enemy does is he's an absolute mastermind of hiding within plain sight, so that we see something, we don't believe it, and guess what? You know, that's also a form of programming, because we see it so much that it gets to the point where we think it's normal. And I'll give you guys an example of this, and I think this is why I love God in my life, right? Because I, growing up, wasn't allowed to watch certain TV programs, a lot of ones that involved witchcraft, you know, and at the time I didn't like it and it sucked, right? And a lot of those things I've gone back to watch in my adult life. But here's the thing, because I went back to watch a lot of these things at a time where I had already understood what a lot of these things mean, the understanding that I have of this stuff is significantly different and more accurate than everybody else, because other people are just used to growing up and hearing about spells and this and that and Harry Potter, blah, 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 right? And they just overlook it because it's like, oh, but it's just Harry Potter, oh, it's just a kids movie, oh, it's just a family movie. When you have not been so desensitized and seen this stuff as so normal, then you go to it after the fact, you're like, because this is me, I'm like, so many things I watch, I'm like, how is this that we were acting so casual about this, like this, whatever this thing is, and this is why. And so these Hollywood elites, this is what a lot of them are used for. The Hollywood elites, the world elites, the most richest people out there, you know, they've got the World Health Organization stuff happening. All of these elite people, they each have a different part to play in all of this. Now, what does this have to do with Ali Carter and stuff? Well, she specifically, like I said, mentioned that she has had to deal with these people, had actual sexual interactions with a lot of these people, like herself, which is pretty insane. And I think a lot of what their part to play in this is they get promised, you know, the classic money, power, and fame, you know, the same thing that even Satan tempted Jesus with, same old thing. And this is why I say, the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new. There's nothing happening now that wasn't happening before. That's what you have to recognize as well. But anyway, so, this whole money, power, and fame deal for, essentially whatever the enemy wants, which really for a lot of them is this MK Ultra stuff, which I'm going to talk more separately about MK Ultra in another video, not part of this series, because I feel like that's another whole thing to get into. But basically it's a whole program of stuff that they're doing with a lot of these Hollywood people to actually program and control exactly what they're doing. And the reason why this is important for us to talk about is because of something that Ali said. She said that we fund their paychecks when we are buying them, streaming their music and buying their clothes, etc., etc. We are funding their paychecks, right? We are allowing these things to happen. And Hollywood, the world, the internet is not a real place, guys. It's not a real place. A lot of these things are staged and forged. And it's crazy to me because there was a video I was going to post like some months ago, and it was talking about why I reckon that majority of A-list celebrities are in on a lot of this stuff. And I never posted it because I was like, I don't want to be one of those people that just says things and people feel like, oh, she's just trying to make something out of nothing, right? So I didn't post it. I decided not to post it. In fact, I think I just deleted the video altogether. But it's interesting what I'm seeing here, because it's showing that so many of these people, the reason why and this is something that you guys really must understand, that in order for you to be a part of this stuff, they get you. It's like why I talked about humiliation rituals, and I've talked about this a number of times. And isn't it interesting how the more time is going on, the more things are coming out, the more we're all talking about a lot of this stuff, the more we're all now finally acknowledging that this is real, that child sacrifice is real, that there's humiliation rituals, that people are drinking blood and stuff like that, right? But anyway, they all get involved in this stuff, right? Because then part of the reason why they do this is so that it's in order to keep everybody silent. It's in order to make sure that nobody can speak up about what's really going on, right? And so the fact that she spoke about, because she talks about how she would literally be taken to the houses of Hollywood elites via these underground tunnels. So even these houses themselves are connected to all of this stuff. And she said from all the way from the trap houses through, the example she gave was to the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. She said there's many tunnels under there, every single way of transportation, which I talked about a couple of times as well. And she's being sold, you know, for sexual things. She talks about yes, paying their paycheck. This is responsible. Oh yes, she talked about how they make us responsible even for how they look, in terms of making sure that we pay for through us buying their stuff, their merch, and all of this for what they do. And isn't it interesting, guys? Think about this. Going back to what I said in the last video, how we have a tendency in society to find a celebrity that we idolize, and we idolize them like a god. And that's exactly what Satan wants from us as people. He wants us to idolize other anything, because here's the thing. As long as it's anything but God, Satan is the one who's going to benefit off of it, because the Bible says and God says, you shall have no other gods before me, full stop, right? Going against that, any other god that's included in there, as soon as you include any other god, even if you're including God as well, you're already outside of the will of God in doing that. And that's why there's a lot of issues with a lot of Christians today, because a lot of Christians today, they believe in God and stuff, but they have other gods in their life that are operating, whether they recognize it or not. That, and one of those gods, Mammon, as they talk about in the Bible, money. The god of money. Money, as I said to you guys so many times, is really one of the gods that runs this world, you know. And so, and again, all of these gods are just facades, cover-ups for Satan, because as long as it's not God, it's Satan. That's how it works. And so again, they get us so obsessed with them that we are doing this. Like, I see this like with people like Beyonce. Think about it, right? It's like literally being under a spell. I see people buying, like, they're like, I'm gonna buy 500, 400 pound tickets, $400 tickets. I'm like, you're gonna pay all of that money, and you're barely struggling in life, and you're talking about how you're broke, but you can find all the money to buy tickets to go and see Beyonce, and you can find all the money to buy Kylie Jenner lip kits every time they come out, and purchase Skims. This is because this is demonic, guys, and this is what they're doing on purpose. They're getting all this money and stuff, getting us to worship them, because Satan benefits off of us worshiping anybody but from anybody apart from God, right? We worship them, which then puts us under their control. We're under control. That's why people, we see this even with fan groups. We talk about this on the channel all the time, how fan groups will follow. And I did a video as part of my Jessie Nelson videos where I said, how responsible should a celebrity be for their fans, like in terms of influencing how their fans believe, what their fans think is acceptable, how they think is acceptable for them to behave online and stuff, right? And so we encourage that. This is what they want. In fact, Ali had even said that when she used to go to these Hollywood parties, one of the ones where she was sold off to Joe Biden, and she had been pulled through a whole bunch of celebrities, some of which she knew. She said there were some of them that didn't know her, that she didn't know, were offended because they were conceited, because they were like, well, how could you not know who I am? And I heard a similar notion about Trey Songz the other day. I didn't make a video about this because I haven't had enough info to make a whole video yet, but Trey Songz has had a similar allegations coming out because he has approached different people. Keke Palmer stepped forward and said something, and again, her career has, some would agree, some people think that her career suffered as a result of her speaking up, or that they tried to silence her, because Keke Palmer came forward and said that Trey Songz basically is known amongst, you know, the circles for trying to force himself onto women, and that when a lot of women have said that, like some women have said that the reason why he puts himself, like, I'm trying to think of the word, what's like the word where you make a move on somebody, okay, he makes moves on women and stuff, and he gets offended apparently when they don't respond well, because it's like, well, who doesn't want to have a kiss from Trey Songz, or who doesn't want to have me, like, how can you not want to have me, you know? It's this very seriously narcissistic way of being. And again, I talked to you guys about this before, about how Satan is the father of narcissism, which I talk about on my other channel, Kings and Queens, and how this is why these people become more like them. And isn't it funny? Because this is what the enemy wants. When you worship somebody, you become more like them. That's why God says to worship him, because we become more like him, which turns us into more of a good person, more somebody that radiates light, that radiates goodness, and all of those things. Satan wants the very same. He wants us to worship him, because then we'll become more like him. And that's why you see these people become more and more evil as time goes on. The people who are involved with him. And so that's what you've got these Hollywood people doing. It's the same thing. They're like to this girl, like, how can you not know who I am? Right? And again, a lot of what Ali spoke about, it's very interesting how normal it was for this stuff to be going on at these Hollywood parties. Because my thinking is this. If this is just all happening at these Hollywood parties, which is where a lot of this stuff goes down as well, right? Then it must just be that level of normal, because there has to be a significant enough number of people who are aware and are participating in this for it to even be something that can just be seen. Because a lot of this stuff she's talking about, she was a child. She was under the age of 15. We've already heard the stories of Drew Barrymore. I did a video about Drew Barrymore and how at 8 years old, she was going around, in clubs, partying and stuff with her mum, and people were feeding her, giving her drugs, giving her alcohol. She had to get herself out of that in rehab at like 14. We hear of so many of these different types of stories that go on in Hollywood parties. These things are going down. This means that a big chunk of people who are there are involved in this stuff. This is why it goes on, and I think it's typical of us as humans to assume the opposite, to assume that, oh, maybe it's just one or two. It's like, no, clearly it's not just one or two. In fact, the other day I was watching a video. I really want to remember what happened in this video. And it was a video of like the couple of rappers who were together. And I wish I could remember exactly what happened. But it was a couple of rappers who were together, and they were like doing some kind of ritual right then and there. Like they were doing some kind of ritual then and there. I wish I could remember. I can't remember exactly what happened. But anyways, you guys get the gist of what I'm talking about. So this stuff is very normal amongst these Hollywood people, and it's because this is how they gain their money and fame. This is how, and remember, there's a part of them that enjoys this, because like I talked about in the previous video, like where I talked about where demons come from, the reason why it's enjoyable for these people to do things that are evil is because it's the demons inside them who want these things, right? And the more you and the demon together become one, the more you yourself enjoy these things as well. So a lot of these people, they might have started out a bit like, oh, I'm not sure about that, like, and at a certain point they're enjoying it. You can almost think about it like this, like you see this with people. You might have somebody who say doesn't drink alcohol, right? Never drinks alcohol, right? And then they might get tempted one day, just like a little bit, like, oh, come on, just drink, just have a drink, just have one, they might have one, and then before you know it, they're absolutely loving it. Like at the beginning they said that they hated the taste of this and they hated the taste of that. Now I'm using this because this is a perfect way to describe it, because, and this is also why even in the Bible a lot of the time it uses the idea of being drunk and etc. as a term to describe being under a spiritual influence, right? Like it talks about, that we should be drunk on the things of God. Like I always say to people that I'm drunk on Jesus, because sometimes I'm really drunk on Jesus, right? And I want to be drunk on Jesus. If I'm drunk on the devil, I'll probably be doing some pretty evil stuff out there, right? And so it's kind of like that same concept of a lot of these people. And again, the Bible talks about that, people's consciences becoming seared, that the more you do something, the less bad it becomes to do it. I feel like this is the slippery slope with a lot of things. It's like the same thing with lying. If you say a lie once and you're somebody who never lies, that's probably going to bother you, because you internally know this isn't you. I don't know. And it's literally the same way that selling your soul works out. It's literally all the same thing, because selling your soul, it's use, as I said to you guys in my selling your soul videos, which I saw some people have been watching that playlist, so thank you if you've been watching that playlist. I've got more videos to come in there as well. But anyway, and because in the beginning of, I said to you guys, the basis of selling your soul is you going outside of your own morals and values for the sake of gain in some kind of way, because that is you the starting of it. So like I said, it could be in the beginning. I like to use this example because it's one that's very understandable towards people. You want to be a model, you love modeling, you've always wanted to be a model, so on and so forth. You want to do, I don't know what you call that, you want to be on the cover of Vogue or whatever, right? What happens is you go to a modeling gig, and in this modeling gig, it's the first gig you've had in a while that's actually gone through well, and it's actually amazing, and the people said they really like you. You're done with the shoot, but they say that they might want to do a few extra shots, and you're like, okay, you've already started to sign the paperwork now, like you're in, basically. They told you that they're really happy with you, and then they say, well, but we're going to need you to do a couple of nude shots. And then you're like, well, I said I didn't want to do nude shots. Like, you already filled out in the paperwork that you signed up for this, that you weren't going to do nude shots, right? But they're asking for you to do nude shots now. And then they say to you, well, you kind of have to, because this is what you have to do in the business, and it's just going to be a couple. And before you know it, they've got you doing, you know, adult movies and whatnot, right? Telling you that it's because you're going to make money from it, because you're going to be successful, because all the models do this, because this is how things work in Hollywood. This is all the stuff they say. And you know why? It's because they're setting you up. That's exactly what the enemy's doing, setting people up to sell their soul for gain, right? And now it always backfires. This is what I always say to people. The plans of the enemy always backfire. That's why you got a lot of people in the entertainment industry right now who are coming out and saying, you know, this is what I've happened, this is what I've been through, and it's horrible and it's horrific. And a lot of these people, if I could, I would pray for them like directly, but I pray for them anyway, because it's a hard thing when you realize that what this is really about. But this is how it works. You get pulled in, and so at the beginning it sounds okay. Like I said, in the modeling gig at the beginning, if you get asked to do one nude and they say, okay fine, how about you just do topless but you can keep your bottoms on, and they're like, okay, and you do it. And the next time they're like, okay, we like that, but can you just do one in these shorts? Can you just do one with this skirt and like bending over? Can you just take the skirt off actually? In fact, can you just take off everything? It's like, actually, can we now add a man in the picture? Do you get what I mean? And this is how it works, because as that's happening, you're changing the inner, your conscience is changing. Whereas if you had been offered the end of that opportunity of like, we want you to pose naked with this other man doing this and that in the beginning you would have been shocked because of the setup of your conscience at that point. But now, because of where you're at, you're not shocked anymore, because you're like, now you're kind of, it's only a step away from what you were last comfortable with. And that's exactly how things with the enemy work. And you're going to see this as we go through all these other levels of this, you know, how this happens. Like over here, we're talking about the elites. In the previous video, I was talking about the very, very deep parts of the things where they're doing, you know, mind control and all these different experiments they're doing on human beings and stuff like that, right? A lot of these Hollywood elites are probably not going that far, but definitely a lot of them enough are doing things like being inappropriate with children, etc., right? And to some extent, or you know, the whole, oh well, she was only 6, she just turned 18, she just turned 16, like. And I said this to you guys before in the Carrie Fukunaga video, where I was like, if you have to justify that, oh, she just turned 18, that's probably because your conscience was telling you otherwise, you know. And I believe even the conscience is something, it's like the base level of God that God gives us. That's like, if you decide to partner with me, then that thing is going to strengthen. Or if you decide to partner with Satan, then that thing is going to become so dull that you're not even going to have one anymore. And that's why you get to the point where a lot of these people, you wonder, like, do these people have a conscience? It's seared. So yeah, so this is where we find a lot of these Hollywood elites, a lot of these celebrities who love to be worshipped and have their fans, because they make money, and they make money for those who are around them. They continue to do whatever it is, whether that's being a vessel. I talked about why I believe Beyonce's alter ego Sasha Fierce is actually a demon, you know. Whatever it is for the kingdom of darkness, they do for the kingdom of darkness, and it gets deeper and deeper. Not just with Beyonce, Jay-Z apparently is a member of the 33rd degree of, why is this now I'm doing all this anyway. He's a 33rd degree member of the Illuminati, which is like the third level that exists in the world. You've got above the 33rd degree, which has got 33 people, there's the 13 witches, which is again just typical copycat of like God and Jesus, like how Jesus had the 12 disciples, and you've got the 33rd witches. And then above that is the highest level of human people who are involved, the Rothschilds. And then above that we've got Satan. And that's how all of those stuff work, right? So I'm getting distracted because I could hear things in the background. But that's how all those things work, right? And so we know that Jay-Z is a part of that. So he's obviously deep into this stuff. And of course they make it sound like, yeah, guys, this is nothing. But even Beyonce referenced this song and this stuff in her song. Beyonce is half the reason people are doing an OnlyFans. Why? Because she made a reference to it. And who did she speak against in that lyric as well? Christian people of God. So it's like there's this little thing of like trying to get even us in society. This is what a lot of them, their job is to do, is to even get us in society to not take this stuff seriously. Because think about it like this, right? If you've got a song that's catchy enough, you're not gonna, how many times have you, okay, this happens to me, I'll speak for myself. There have been times where I will listen to a song and I will just start singing along just because I like the beat and I like the way the lyrics sound. I don't even know what the lyrics mean. And that's why I got into the habit of, like, before I even like a song, if I hear it once and I feel like I'm gonna like listen to it again, before I even do that, I stop and I go and read the lyrics of the whole song, for starters, at the very least. And anyways, I told you guys, aside from lyrics, how, you know, historically they take the masters of music, you know, and they go and put spells on them so that whatever copies of this music that's being made, it gets sent along with the demon to the listener. And I think a lot of issues that people have today, it's because of these people, these super spreaders. I did a video talking about super spreaders, so you guys should check that out. I talk about how celebrities are super spreaders. They because we go and we intake from what they're giving. Astro World is a perfect example of this, right? People showed up, people were there by their own free will, so you can't try and say, why didn't God stop this and that? You went to Astro World, you knew that Travis Scott likes to do all this, what do you call it, what's that stuff called, rage, whatever. You went there, you get there, and then he's like, as soon as, from the people, not even people who believe in God, are saying, they felt the demons rushing into them, because this is what they're doing. This is their purpose. Their purpose is to get this type of stuff to do. As long as they do that, guess what? They get to also have the money and the power and the fame and this and that, right? And then the deeper they want to go, the greater things that they can be able to do. And that's why I think a lot of the people you see who are the most powerful, the most involved, the ones who are the most involved tend to be the most powerful, tend to be the richest, because that's what the trade-off is. And then you find Satan doing the exact same thing, like I said, with the modeling thing, where it's like, oh, well, with this modeling thing, maybe you could get like maybe $50 for that, but if you do nude photos go for more expensive. Nude photos can go for 500. And that's why I think they purposely make life, the living cost and living expensive and everything, really hard, because it makes us all very susceptible. And this is what even Scientologists do. You know, Scientology, which is another weird demonic religion, they specifically used to go and find people, and they do this in Hollywood in general. They always target people who are in a tough spot, because they are easy to get involved into this type of stuff, because they are desperate for their big break. They're desperate for an opportunity, so they purposely target people who are you know, who are struggling, who don't have money, who children and children, for one, because it's a very easy way, especially if you have children. If those children have parents like Ali Carter's or Britney Spears's or all these other people, where those parents are happy to sacrifice that kid anyway, it's very easy to involve these types of people. So that's how these Hollywood elites and just the world elites get involved. It's these trade-offs of things that they do, you know, where they gain power, they gain money, they gain fame, they gain whatever they gain, right, in order and in exchange for allowing the kingdom of darkness to do whatever the kingdom of darkness wants to do. You see this a lot in science. I'll tell you that one for free. A lot of these big scientific brands, these Pfizer and all these people who are coming up with stuff, right? Why do you think that they're at the forefront? Why do you think all bunches of governments are coming together and wanting to fund these people? Because there's a trade-off happening behind the closed doors, because they're working along with the others, with the top level of all this stuff. I'm going to talk about governments next, actually. They're talking about, they're teaming up with all these other people and letting them wreak havoc. You know, all of a sudden everybody's looking at Bill Gates like he's a healthcare professional. This guy started in computer programming, and yet he's the one who's saying we need to be reducing fertility in less economically developed countries, and taking over there these drugs, right? Which he's not in drugs, which means he gets involved with these companies, right? All these big companies that we now all trust in so much today. Which, thank the Lord as well, because when I was studying my chemistry degree, I just knew I could not go into pharmacy, and I just knew from day one GlaxoSmithKline was a business I was not finna work with, I was not finna mess with, because I knew that the way I'm trying to level up in my life, I'm gonna get to a certain point where they're gonna ask me to sell my soul, and I'm not selling it. Like, I'm just not, okay? I'm not selling it, right? But anyway, you got Bill Gates and people who are promising, who will use these companies, fund their research, fund everything they're doing. You know why? Because then they will allow him to do what he wants to do, which is, as I gave an example before, that there was I can't remember what virus it was, but there was a breakout, maybe it was malaria or something, and in another country. And what they did was they laced that medication with drugs that would lower fertility in those countries without telling them, without telling anybody. And so do you think they wouldn't do stuff like that over here? But why do I mention this? Because those big companies that we all trust in, that we all love, right? This is how they factor into it. There's a trade-off. They get all the funding. They get to do whatever other research projects they want to do, right? But as long as they do the research projects that the people who are funding them want, the people who are funding them are the people at the top, and the people at the top have another idea of what they want to do with all this stuff. Does that make sense? And so these also research labs and people are the people also using these children and stuff. Where do they get these cells that they need to make these vaccines? Aborted babies, stem cells from children, stealing all this stuff. They need human flesh and human bodies to be able to experiment. This is why, I don't know if you guys knew this, newsflash, this one's going to be a hard one to hear. But after the Holocaust and everything, did you know that they took those doctors who were doing all these tests and whatever on the Jewish people? They took them to the United States of America. That's where those doctors went to then now work with the United States government. We've heard of all these different this gate, that the all these other governmental organizations like the CIA, etc., do all of these hidden underground experiments on human beings, right? What's the trade-off here? They protect these crazy top level people from they protect those people at the top from what they're doing, and they gain in whatever way that they want to gain, whether it's having a good salary, having a good life, whatever. You see how it all factors into each other? And so again, that's where you've got the top who needs the children for the deeper demonic reasons, especially because child sacrifice is demonic and stuff like that, and killing people and doing all this stuff. A lot of this stuff is the way that they're doing it, especially, is evil. Then you have the lower level, the Hollywood elites, the world elites. These people are getting a trade-off. They get to, as long as, but then as well as them getting the trade-off, they also have to participate, because if you don't participate, you could just expose us and then be like, oh, well, we only helped them research this and now we're going to expose them. But if they have you also having to drink the blood of children, they have you also having to abuse children, then it's going to look bad for you if you come out and speak about it, which is how they keep everything hidden. And so that's how these things all factor in. But in order to get to this point, in order for the children to even be available to these top two levels, right, we're going to have to talk about what comes before, because the only reason that's possible is because the children have to get there anyway. And you guys are probably thinking, but we have the government and we have presidents and we have this and we have child protective services and we have schools and we have police officers. Well, we're going to talk about those in upcoming episodes, and I'm going to be explaining to you guys how these guys are factoring into this bigger machine, how they are part of the plan, part of the pathway that the children are being passed through up to these levels. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next part. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as far as being informed, because enjoying it is probably not enjoying, it's probably pretty scary. But remember, guys, as I always say, the Lord did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So we're learning things, guys, so we can use the power we have with the sound mind that we have to execute the power that the Lord Jesus Christ has given us. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll see you in the next part, where we're going to be talking about the government. I'm going to be talking about the Obamas, their involvement, because Ali specifically named Joe Biden, Michelle Obama, and Barack Obama having all been the ones who she has had direct abuse from those people, sexual abuse, her very self. She talked about being sold to Joe Biden a number of times. And we're also going to talk about the one person that was in office that she trusted, but she has hope in, because they were the one president who actually gave money and spoke about, the only one to speak about trafficking, and the one that she believes is the only one that she hasn't seen in and amongst all these crazy circles. So I'll catch you guys in the next video to talk about that. If you don't know what this is all about, as I say, check out the first video where I give an intro and explanation, and you probably want to watch all the videos through in order, because that's how you understand what's happening. Other than that, guys, God bless every single one of you. God bless the children of this world. I pray that you would empower us, Lord, all of us, to actually fight on behalf of these kids, and that people would rise up and they would not be afraid, and that we would be able to call out all these individuals. That's what I'm making this series for. In Jesus' name, God bless every one of you, and goodbye.